Hello, nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Great.
So this is actually a lot closer than I thought. So we're based just around the corner. So it's actually it was a lovely walk over this morning.
Excellent.
So what do we mean by the word FinTech?
So FinTech is basically bringing two words together, finance and technology, and it's applying technology to help the financial services world. So it's used in pretty much every financial product, from mortgages through protection, through life and pensions and everything else there. So let me take you around the office and we can talk about some of the products that Iress are working on.
Could you explain a bit about how different Iress is compared to maybe other companies that you've worked with, and over the 12 years what you've seen?
Sure. I mean, Iress is kind of unique in the market in so much as the scope of products that we have. So previous companies I've worked have generally been in one area, maybe working in the mortgages area or perhaps working in protection, whereas Iress brings all that together. So there's various different streams. So at the start of the 12-year cycle, I was working in the mortgage space. That then brought me through various other parts of the business into the wealth space and wealth management and private wealth, all the way through trading and market data feeds, all the way through to pensions superannuation. So quite a mix of different sort of areas to sort of get broader experience on. I ran a team that brought the cloud to Iress. So we moved all of our products outside of traditional data centers and moved them into the cloud. And with that opened up a whole wealth of opportunities in terms of AI and having everything centralized in one place.
Well, it's really interesting that you said that you brought it in. So when you started, how's the technology advanced from when you first started to what it is now?
I guess the industry keeps breathing in and out. So it goes from a centralized model where you used to have a big computer and terminals that weren't essentially where a lot of the processing wasn't done, to a world where when I started, it was more about having laptops and desktops where you'd have the programs and the software running on your machine. You'd lump a big laptop onto go and see a client, you'd go and talk about things, you'd come back, you'd upload them. And the internet came along on the web around about the late 90s and the 2000s. That then meant that they introduced the browser into a lot of these conversations as well. So we went from being sort of programs that were battleship grey and very anemic in that sense to this engaging digital world where, you can do a whole lot with browsers. You can, present videos, you can interleave that with the whole advice process, and you can make things more, I guess, engaging with the customers and more personalized in that sense.
But so I think as well it's really important having that personalized sphere as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main areas that FinTech, as I mentioned, has sort of helped. It is understanding some salient facts, 5 or 6 things about an individual. You can generally point them in areas that might be of use to them to sort of educate and to help inform.
So pop it into the top.
That's right. Pull the handle down and the middle button above the nozzle there. That one there, yeah.
Is there any elements of cybersecurity and keeping that data protected that you implement and use?
Yeah, I mean, cyber's at the front of everything that we do. So right across the value chain from where we manufacture the products all the way through to operating them in the sort of various data centers that the cloud has around the world as well. So we have a very strong InfoSec team here, headed up by Ian McKenna. And essentially what enables us to do is to have defense in depth and layers of protection from ensuring that when we are writing the software that code is protected, all the way through to making sure that when we have customer data in the systems when they're running out in the field, that information has various levels of protection to ensure that data privacy is a foremost concern and reassuring for our customers as well.
And obviously with all that data up in the cloud and using the teams to protect the data, how many cyber attacks do you have a day, a week?
It does vary, but it's quite frightening. We get thousands daily. And the attacks we see are getting more sophisticated as well. There's a lot of use of AI being brought into some of the areas that you wouldn't expect to basically profile the company and to sort of scan the websites and to scan our endpoints for all of our services. And there's a whole lot of toolkits out there that some of the sort of state-sponsored and criminal actors are using now that will help automate a lot of that process as well. So again, it's about reinforcing that and finding tools that we can help to try and counter that to the best of our ability.
And when we're talking about all those attacks, obviously that's a mammoth job. Is there a set team, and who looks after those sort of incidents within Iress?
Yes, we've got an InfoSec team that runs across all of the regions. So there's a number of people based within Cheltenham. There's people in Australia, there's people in South Africa and covering all of the various Iress sites as well. And we have tools that we roll out globally that protect us. So and one of those tools will ensure that you need to be on Iress equipment to be able to access certain systems. Other systems will monitor operational systems to see that there's no attacks coming and that people are not trying to sort of get into the sort of the operational side of it as well as the design side. So it might be good to have a conversation with Ian McKenna, who's our Global Chief Information Security Officer. He's in London today, so let's have a chat with him.
That'd be amazing.
Hi Ian, I'm here with Daisy today from CyNam, and we thought it'd be great to have a chat with you. You've been in the business for a number of years now, and during that time you've taken Iress to another level on the info security side, so it'd be good for you just to share some of the great things that you and the team have done.
So when I came on board, I was the third CISO in this business, and I inherited a very developed team. We had the best software, cyber infosec software on the market, and lots and lots of it. But we weren't getting the full value from all of our investments. So the very first thing I done in this business was to bring in a strategy of consolidate, secure, and defend. The consolidate part of that was to look at each piece of software independently, look for duplication, retire software, reduce our spend on software that had common use elsewhere, and really drive the value from our existing investments to get a better outcome, to allow the guys to be better at what they did without having blindness across all of the tooling, too much tooling against the guys. We were finding it difficult. We're in a far, far better place now. And that really drives the business forward by having a highly effective information security team with next generation tooling and actually delivering the effect that it was intended for.
So, Darryl, you've mentioned how Iress is based in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, Singapore. Is there any differences that you see within FinTech in those different countries? Like, is one more advanced, and what sort of patterns do you see?
Certainly, if you look at regulation that's coming to Europe in recent years, GDPR's come along, and that was kind of spearheaded by the UK and Europe in that sense before it arrived in Australia and America. Similar with AI at the moment. The AI Act is going through American Congress, but actually Europe's already started the march on that in terms of getting some of those rules and regulations live in September last year. So that then leads in terms of how that is addressed within FinTech as well. So whilst one country may lead in one area, it may basically be secondary in some other areas as well. So it's a bit of a mix and match between, say, the FCA here in the UK versus APRA in Australia and the various other regions as well.
FinTech is using emerging technologies. You mentioned the AI application. Is there any other emerging technologies that you've seen FinTech using or starting to use?
Well, I think, as we mentioned before, AI is everywhere, and you look to see what's coming next in terms of the journey. Gartner have a hype curve that they talk around in terms of any technology or anything that comes through. So AI is going through this curve that looks like a heartbeat, where everybody adopts it, and then there's a downward spiral, and it sort of oscillates around that point until it settles and comes in there. So next trends that are coming through that are interesting to me and the company and to other areas in sort of the FinTech space is quantum computing. There's been reasonable advances in recent months where Google are producing hardware now where the opportunity it presents to do a lot more very quickly is very interesting, but equally it does touch on the security side as well. So one of the biggest risks, I think, to the industry is around quantum decryption. So there's a lot of criminal activity in terms of stealing data. That's probably the crown jewels that the people go for when they're trying to get into a company. With that data, if it's encrypted, it can take a long time for it to be decrypted, at which point it's often out of date as well. With quantum decryption, you can take those and what would take potentially years and years to solve, can actually decrypt it in a matter of minutes. So that presents a massive risk to the industry, not just FinTech, but also to the wider society as a whole. So that's where to balance it up, you have quantum encryption as well. So actually, if it's encrypted in such a way, it should theoretically take the same time to decrypt it and to level the playing field as again. So quantum computing is a real area of interest at the moment, and you can already lease quantum services in some of the clouds, and the hardware's coming along at the moment.
And I think something that's really important as well is the fact that everybody uses FinTech, and they might not necessarily realise. But an example is tapping on your phone. That's FinTech, and people don't necessarily realise that it is actually an everyday application.
Indeed, it's such a wealth of diversity in terms of what FinTech actually is. You've probably got a smartphone with your banking app on it. I've got one for my mortgage, one for my current account. They talk to each other when I want to make a payment. And all these things are nicely integrated. So the responsibility in FinTech is to make sure those things happen securely. And that's the key thing with all of this, is to ensure that whilst availability and accessibility of services is really important, the paramount piece of all of this is to make sure that it is secure.
It was great to see such an impactful company just a stone throw away from CyNam, and it is really interesting to hear about how cybersecurity is so integral to FinTech. Darryl mentioned about quantum, which we will be doing a deep dive in the final part of our documentary series.